Well, guys, you heard it here first. Being part of the LGBTQIXYZ community is out, and being part of the ADHD, bipolar, OCD, anxiety, depression community is in. Which really, all jokes aside, does make me sad. Because mental illness is a real thing. People struggle through their mental health on a daily basis, but like all things in our modern culture, it has now become so widespread, so mainstream, so normalized that now you can scroll through a 10-slide TikTok test to self-diagnose and figure out if you are actually bipolar. Plus, it is glamorized online, it's glamorized in TV shows like Euphoria that young people are watching every single day. And so to that I say, let's remove the glamorization. Make mental health struggles a problem again. Make them something that is serious, that you take seriously, that you are actively working through, that you are fighting to overcome, that you are seeking solutions for, not just moaning about on a podcast or in a 30-second TikTok video. And that, my friends, I think is why Dana White is saying that men should not talk about their feelings. Now, before we dive into all of that, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to the channel if you've not already, and of course, ring that notification bell if you want to stay up to date on every single thing that we upload here on The Brett Cooper Show. All right, so what made me want to do this episode today was the fact that Dana White just got a Time magazine cover. The majority of this cover profile was obviously about the UFC, the rise of UFC's, success, the upcoming fight at the White House, but he made one comment about masculinity and mental health that ruffled a lot of feathers, and so now this has become the most talked about part of the entire article. So, the article reads, cigars, guitars, sports memorabilia, they're all there. Quote, I am unapologetically masculine, White says. Men, in White's mind, never split the bill when out to dinner with a woman. Men don't shirk family responsibilities, and they never, ever vocalize their mental health struggles. Quote, talking about it publicly, I just feel like opens the door to make young men think that it is okay to just effing go, oh, I'm having mental health issues, White says in a mock whiny voice. Handle it behind closed doors. Don't show that weakness to anybody. And don't call any of this toxic. Quote, what is toxic masculinity, says White. Who has it? Who's too masculine? The author then replies and says, I suggest that when this attitude begets unjustified violence, you can call it toxic, no? Quote, then you're a douchebag, says White. There's a difference between being a douchebag and being masculine. And on that note, I completely agree. I also just love the way that this article is written. It's written with such disdain, and it's very humorous if you actually like Dana White and you know the bias of this reporter, and that this reporter definitely does not like Dana White. But anyway, all of that aside, getting into it, back into the topic of mental health, what I found interesting is that now as this quote is going viral, everybody is clipping it, putting it online, is that there was no real consensus among the men in the comments. Like, for example, somebody said, to an extent, he is right. Men should talk about their mental health issues with certain people behind closed doors, maybe. But coming out in the public about it is just not a good idea as a man. Another person said, and this is why dudes kill themselves. What if they don't have somebody to talk to behind closed doors? Another man said, one of his biggest up-and-coming talents says the exact opposite. 100 men per day in the US take their own lives. Looking weak is an insane way to put it. It takes tremendous strength to talk about these issues, mostly because people like Dana say that you shouldn't. And I see his point, because it's a very strong statement to come out and say, you are essentially a pussy if you talk about your mental health problems. You are weak if you say, I need help. Just figure it out behind closed doors. And this commenter, again, brings up a good point. What if you don't have anybody to talk to about it? Now, I'm guessing that this commenter was referring to a fighter in the UFC named Paddy Pimblett, who, after losing two of his close friends to suicide, has now dedicated many of his post-fight interviews in the octagon to spreading awareness about men's mental health. And this is what he said after a fight, just days after he learned that one of his friends had died.
I want to dedicate this fight to little baby Lee, little warrior. Like, more of a fighter than any of us will ever be. But also, I woke up on Friday morning at 4 a.m. to a message that one of my friends back home had killed himself. This was 5 hours before me weigh-in. So Ricky, lad, that's for you. But there's a stigma in this world that men can't talk. Listen, if you're a man and you've got weight on your shoulders and you think the only way you can solve it is by killing yourself, please speak to someone. Speak to anyone. People would rather, I know I'd rather me mate cry on my shoulder than go to his funeral next week. So please, let's get rid of this stigma and men start talking.
I mean, I've now watched that clip like 10 times as I was putting this episode together. I tear up every single time. It's incredibly powerful. And he is far from the only man in the UFC universe that has used his platform to speak about this. Another fighter, this fighter's name is Khalil Roundtree. He has been open about his own journey, which he talked about here.
I feel like I'm on a good track right now, just based off of how I feel physically. The mental ups and downs are not as steep right now. And I would say that that's kind of the place I'm in. Is I've experienced a lot of highs, I've experienced a lot of lows. I'm still me, so they're still there internally, emotionally, and I'm just really trying to figure out how to kind of like even out the wave versus like the extremes, because I can be very extreme, and just really trying to like, stay within that middle ground of balance.
Now, personally, don't know about you guys, but personally, I would not call either of those men pussies. I actually think most people would call them inspirations. And just based on the comment sections of those two videos, I think the commenters would agree. For example, one man commented and said he has no idea how powerful this is, talking about Patty's speech. Absolutely amazing. Another man commenting under Roundtree's video said, I've been a fan of Khalil since Tough. I can really relate to the guy, humble, honest, down to earth, and dedicated, been through adversity with weight and mental health, and focusing on finding themselves. Win or lose, he is still a great fighter. Another commenter, a man, said, I have often wondered how many lives this speech saved. And that comment was in regards to Patty, and that type of speech that you guys saw, it is now a speech that he gives often. And this is all an incredibly relevant and important subject because men in this country make up 80% of suicides. They are 4 times as likely to commit suicide as American women. So all of this to say, just to lay the groundwork for this topic, I do not think that all conversations around mental health are bad or weak. Obviously, some of them are actually very needed. However, that being said, I do think, unfortunately, that Dana has a bit of a point based on the way that our current culture wears mental illness as a type of accessory. And if we had not, destigmatized and normalized mental health to the point where people are now openly using it as a crutch, it's now this cool community that they want to be a part of, then I would probably be a lot angrier about his statement. I would agree with it a lot less. But unfortunately, this is just the culture that we live in, and I think that he is reacting to that. And because of this culture that has now normalized everything, a lot of times when people are talking about mental health, I roll my eyes and I feel awful about that fact. Like on this note, another commenter under the original Dana post said this. He said, I'm currently debating writing a book about suicide and mental health, and as crazy as Dana White sounds, he does have a point. People have attempted to destigmatize talking about mental health so much that there is actually a backlash against it. And I hate to say it, it's actually a very crappy feeling, but I agree. And that probably comes from my own personal lived experiences. I mean, as you guys probably know by now, I literally talked about it in yesterday's episode, but I've spent over a decade now watching my older brother fight his own mental health battles. I've watched him fight schizophrenia for over a decade. I've watched him abuse drugs. I have gone to find him on the street in California where he was homeless. I have watched my dad fight clinical depression for my entire life. I have seen people that I love try to hurt themselves and take their own lives. I personally, on my own journey to work through all of that, spent years in therapy, and honestly, with all of the drastic changes in my life over the last couple of years, I might even be due to go back to therapy to make sure my head is on straight for the future. But my point being, I have been incredibly entrenched in the mental health world for essentially my entire life. I have watched severe mental illness in action. I have seen people that I know and love fight to take back their lives and heal and overcome. And I have also seen what happens when you do nothing, when you just give in, when you refuse to speak to somebody or seek help, you refuse to even acknowledge that the problem exists and is hurting the people around you. So I'm sorry if personally, I just don't really love the Gen Zers, the millennials on TikTok who are just so addicted to self-diagnosing themselves with disorders from the DSM just so that they can feel like they are a part of something, because at the end of the day, that's really what it is. And yes, what you just saw is actually happening more than you think. It is now even being studied. One article reads, we are more anxious and depressed than ever before, or at least talking about it more freely. But the trendiness of sad online culture may lead to wrongful self-diagnoses and an inadvertent trivialization of severe illnesses. Quote, more and more teenagers are convinced that depression, anxiety, anorexia, and bipolarity are cool or can even make you special. Quote, for some people, especially when they're young, there is a bit of a pull to join a group, and the group of people with social anxiety or depression feels like one that you can easily join. Now, I read this and I was just like, great. Like, we're we're all just so screwed up. Like, it's not just that social media itself, it's not just that the doom scrolling and the algorithm is bad for our mental health. Now, literally, social media is making people romanticize having anxiety, having bipolar disorder, having OCD, anorexia, so that they can fit in. And so to that I say silence. Surf Shop is a great place to buy suppressors for your firearm. Haven't you heard? Now, real talk here, suppressors used to feel like this whole dangerous, mysterious thing to me. Like you needed a lawyer and a filing cabinet and a blood oath and 6 to 12 months of your life just to be able to acquire one. Plus the government made you pay them a tax stamp just to get one. Well, as of January 1st, 2026, that $200 tax from the government is gone. And with Silencer Shop, getting a suppressor is actually not that hard at all. It's actually quite simple. You just go to their website, you pick your suppressor, you create your profile, sign a couple of easy forms, and they handle all of the rest. That is it. It literally feels easier than making an Amazon return. And if you haven't shot suppressed yet, you genuinely do not know what you are missing. So we use suppressors constantly on the farm. It's less noise, it's less recoil, way more fun for just shooting in the backyard. You can actually hear yourself thinking after. It is just better in every single way. Plus, and this is the part that I love the most, my friends over at Silencer Shop are not just selling you gear. Their foundation is currently suing the federal government to protect R2A rights every single day. They also sell firearms, optics, other accessories too, so it is a full one-stop shop run by people who genuinely are in our corner. So head on over to silencershop.com/Cooper for a better, more comfortable shooting experience. And for a more comfortable and worthwhile learning experience, you guys need to check out my friends over at GCU. Now, here's the thing about higher education. As you know, most of it is kind of a scam. You take on this mountain of debt, you get a degree in something that does not translate to a real job, and then 4 years later, you are broke, you're confused, you are jobless, you are wondering what happened. Now, I have been saying this for years, but Grand Canyon University is genuinely different, and this is why I keep working with them and why I keep talking about them. Now, you might not know this, and this is so incredible, but GCU has frozen their tuition cost since 2009. That is not a typo, because while every other university has been hiking rates year after year, lining their own pockets while their students fail, GCU decided that they were going to make affordability a foundation of the school. And with GCU-funded scholarships, the average student is only paying $8,900 a year. For a private Christian university, that is remarkable, and so is the education. With hybrid online and in-person classes, GCU offers over 380 academic pathways, and they are all built for the real world. Plus, 90% of GCU students report that their faith deepened in college, and so it is no wonder that while so many other colleges are bleeding money and going under, GCU is one of the fastest growing universities in the country. It is private, it's Christian, it's affordable, it is nonprofit. Find your purpose today at gcu.edu. Again, that is gcu.edu for a faith-driven, affordable, but remarkable education. Now back to the pitfalls of this widespread normalization and glamorization. One study that was looking at this self-diagnosis found that recent studies, including the BBC experiment highlighting human tendency to manufacture problems, shed light on the psychological underpinnings driving the phenomenon of mental illness glorification. The allure of negativity, packaged in aesthetically pleasing edits and shared experiences, captivates young audiences, blurring the lines between universal emotions and genuine mental health symptoms. Consequently, impressionable individuals may self-diagnose or adopt personality traits associated with fictional characters, leading to potential misinterpretations and worsening of existing challenges. And then they take it even further. A self-diagnosis of mental illness has been frequently self-reported by members of the involuntary celibate community, incels, who have also been extensively linked to mass shooter violence. According to one study, 95% and 93% of this community had self-diagnosed themselves with depression and anxiety, respectively. One can speculate that in the process of normalization and destigmatization, the unintended consequence of using mental illness as a get-out-of-jail-free card, i.e. an exoneration mechanism, has emerged. Oh, you wouldn't say that it is a get-out-of-jail-free card. Imagine using a crutch to further your victim status and a lack of responsibility. In this culture, never. Shocking. Could never see that coming. Obviously, those of us with 2 brain cells know that that is incredibly real. I mean, people are now taking TikTok-generated tests to see if they are bipolar. Just look at this. Do I have bipolar disorder? Here's the 10-question screening test. You can go through, you can answer all of these questions, and then at the end, based on how many times you said yes, they will let you know whether you are actually bipolar. And according to people in the comments, a lot of people are. Like somebody said, 10 out of 10 diagnosed. Another person said, I've got 10 out of 10. What should I do? One girl said, 10 out of 10. I'm 20 and diagnosed. I also have glycomitic disorder, MDD, MIA, BED, and ADHD. Great. Stay safe, y'all. It's hard, but you will get through it. An inspiration, an inspiration. Now, thanks to all of this, the trend of self-diagnosing, the glamorization of mental illness, much like the unintended consequences of the body positivity movement, for example, now fewer people give a crap. Fewer people care. Fewer people are taking it seriously. But I would guess, just taking a gander here, that now there are also more people like Dana White who look around at our soft, responsibility-less culture and say, toughen up, buttercup, don't be a pussy, and does mental illness even exist? Like, the reason that people online say depression isn't real, anxiety isn't real, is because of the TikToks that you just watched, or is because of this phenomenon of everybody right and left just being like, yeah, I'm depressed, I had a sad day, I'm depressed. No, it's like, no, I'm guessing you aren't. I'm guessing you just had a normal human emotion that was not happy. But that does not mean that severe, real mental illness does not exist. It's a very nuanced conversation that unfortunately has been muddled by social media, our desperate need for community, and a desperate need to heighten your own victim status. Now, another unintended consequence of this is that it delegitimizes people who are talking about their own experiences or about mental health on a whole from a genuine, serious, real place. Which brings me back to my point earlier, which is that not all of these conversations are bad. They are not necessarily a sign of weakness. Asking for help, realizing that you are a human with these crazy up and down moments if you are dealing with depression, it does not make you any less of a masculine man, especially if you are taking action to make your life better. For example, my friend Theo Vaughn has been very open about his mental health struggles on his own show. Just take a look at this clip and then we're going to talk about it.
I've been struggling, man. At the past couple years, I've had, it's been a struggle in certain ways with certain behaviors that I'm just not proud of, right? Or really just behaviors that I didn't want to do anymore. My story in my life, and I'm sorry to make this about me kind of, but I'm just trying to share, when I was growing up, my mom, something was wrong with her. I love my mother, but she didn't connect with me. She didn't look at me, and she didn't, she wouldn't hold me that much, and she wouldn't look me in the eyes, right? And so as a kid, I felt like something was wrong with me. It just gave me low self-worth. And honestly, it made it tough for me to even have a self, because the only person that I only knew who I was if you reacted to me well, right? I became just a people pleaser because I didn't have any feelings of self-worth. So the only way I could get my worth was from you, right? From somebody else. And it made sense because I didn't have a me. I didn't have a big sense of self. And so I got myself from who you thought I was. And I needed everybody to like me. Sometimes I realized for myself, I would pray to God to help me get away from certain behaviors in my life. But at the same time that I was praying, there would be a part of me that knew I was probably going to do those things again. That I was probably going to do those things again. But God, please help me. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to have this behavior. But there'll be a little part of me that was like, I know even as I ask for God's help that I'm going to do it again.
I don't see that as weakness. Obviously, I don't. This is a man who is sharing his journey. He is incredibly self-aware. He's incredibly honest. He's sharing all of this with his huge audience of people, many of which I'm sure are struggling through similar things, are trying to overcome things. But most importantly, and this is the thing that always stands out to me about Theo, is that he is actively working through the things that he has going on in his life. He's not just sitting behind a microphone saying, woe is me, have pity on me. In fact, I have never heard him say anything remotely like that at all. He's saying, I've got crap that I want to deal with. I am actively working on it. I am trying to be better. I am praying to God to be better. And that is so incredibly admirable. It is why he went on Rogan's podcast and talked about trying to get off of SSRIs. Just watch.
One of my goals is to get off of antidepressants completely, man. I want to feel how I'm supposed to feel so I can have thoughts and actions that make me feel connected to the world. That shit makes you feel dead, man.
So why did you take them in the first place?
Because I was in a bad relationship 20 years ago and I was having a tough day at school, and they gave them to me, and then I never got off.
Really?
Because when you get off, I think we talked about this once, it's hard.
Yeah, it makes you more depressed, more fucked up, and you're all imbalanced, and you probably are addicted to them.
Yeah. And so that's one of my goals is, and I noticed like, for me, I've been taking like methyl blue. I've been doing some things like, and I'm working with a doctor to help me, but I'm going to get there. And I'm just going to start to take the power back of myself more.
They say that exercise is like many times greater in its effect at alleviating depression.
Dude, I wake up and I do my yoga and I do like a 35-minute workout. I'll do like 6 exercises, 5 runs of it in a row. That's 30 exercises. Burn through them bitches. And if I do that when I get up in the morning, bro, I am good.
Yeah.
I'm fine all day. And I'm also I'm more positive because I've already taken care of myself in a way that I feel is sufficient enough for me to keep operating and moving forward.
I mean, I feel like I'm just like a puddle of emotions this entire episode, but that clip of Theo just makes me tear up. Number one, because I just love him and he's a great human, but like even for myself as just a viewer, that's inspiring to see. Like having accountability, taking back your life, that's not weakness, that's honesty, it's self-awareness, it is accountability. It's something that can and should inspire and empower others who are out there in the same spot as him. How could that be considered weakness? And what's great about men like Theo Von and the UFC fighters Patty and Khalil, and I would hope that Dana White would agree with this, all of his weakness, masculinity comments aside, is that even as they talk about this, even as they are open about it, they keep going. They keep trying to move forward. They show up for work, whether that is to interview somebody, make somebody laugh, or, beat the brains out of another guy. They show up for the people in their lives. They're good friends. They are seeking joy. They're trying to make themselves better. They're trying to make a difference in the world. Like that, in my eyes, is incredibly masculine. That is literally the opposite of weakness. And so if I had to guess, me sitting here psychoanalyzing everything, the weakness that Dana was talking about, lamenting about in that Time profile article is probably, the soy boys who cry online for attention, who make themselves out to be some big victim, but most importantly, who come online and publicly complain about things and lament without actually doing anything to better the situation that they are in. And that, I would agree, man or woman, is weakness. That is self-harming behavior. It's harming the people around you as well. Because at some point in your life, at some point or another, we are all going to have those intense up and down moments like Khalil was talking about in his interview. Like my mom always says, we are one tragic event away from losing our minds, kind of like my brother did. And truth be told, recently, I have been in the valley, if we're talking about the ups and downs. My postpartum hormone crash is definitely not helping. The sleep deprivation is not helping. But man or woman, you pick yourself up. You talk to the people that you love. You get help if you need. You pray more. In my case, you stop eating as many chocolate chip cookies so your brain stops getting inflamed and you stop being so anxious. You go work out like your husband tells you to, and you keep pushing forward. There is absolutely no shame in having mental health problems. There is no shame in being in the valley at a certain point of your life. There is no shame in needing help, asking for help, feeling broken, but it is paramount, in my opinion, that at the end of the day, you start to do something about it. And please, for the love of all that is good in the world, do not make it your summer 2026 accessory. That is over. It's done. I've canceled it.